Nick, I'm just kind of curious about what stood out to you with this character because it's really fun getting to watch you play totally against type here. For the first like 10, 15 minutes, you seem like a really nice guy. Seem
Yeah.
like everything's going good. And then obviously things kind of
That's
change.
typical, that's typical of most friendships, I think, with Nick.
Yeah. uh, yeah, I mean, probably you've hit the nail on the head with the question, that was the chance to be, or at least for the first 10 or 15 minutes to appear to be jovial old Nick Frost character, lots of fun, and then it becomes a little bit more sinister, and then the real joy began. And I worked on the script as well, so I had some input in that, and also I'm a fan of Bruce, so it was one of those little projects. It's like you get to sit in a taxi for 6 weeks, and you can work with Bruce, and the script's, what it is, and could you bring your inner lunatic? And I was like, well, absolutely, yeah, yes, please. But I mean, I don't know. It's easy to. I mean, I think if I've done the job right, even though you shouldn't feel sorry for him, it's a bit dubious in terms of how he got where he got, and I think he's lost something along the way.
Yeah, sure, sure. I think that totally comes across too. Was it like you said it was fun and everything to be able to get to play a totally different character like that? Is it fun when you're actually like filming the scenes, or do you kind of have to bring yourself to a dark place to become that guy?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there were. I think also this. I'm going to kind of Synnøve was such a great person to act those scenes with because she takes it seriously and I take it seriously. And, there were definitely days and scenes where once you exited the scene, then there were tears, definitely. And it's difficult. I don't know. In two hands, you put yourself in that place, and then what I'd say is your body and your hypothalamus doesn't know those things you're feeling aren't real, so you really you react realistically to those things, and it's as I said, it's his life is sad, and he's not a violent man, and he's pushed to this, and having there are a couple of times when I spent like a lot of time screaming at Synnøve, who was herself really sad, and it affected me. I don't like I'm not that person. So to become that person is but that also you become slightly ashamed that that person is absolutely in me.
Yeah, no, sure. I'm sure it's kind of a challenge to hit all those different tones, but I think you do it really well. Like I said, I
And like
really enjoyed watching it in here. I thought it was so much fun. Bruce, kind of just, I'm curious from your perspective, is helming this movie as a director. I really liked how the movie kind of has a foot in two different subgenres, where for a while it's very much a psychological thriller, and then it kind of goes into some more supernatural places. I was kind of reminded of both Alfred Hitchcock and The Twilight Zone while I was watching it. So, was that kind of always your vision from the beginning for this movie? Did you always know you wanted to firmly do these two things, or did that kind of just come about naturally as you were working on it?
I think because Nick and I it's sort of there's a reflection in your previous question to Nick about how there's a switch
Hmm.
from being a kind of realistic space of, you know, having a horrible boyfriend that's been manipulative to this poor woman,
Hmm.
and this woman in a very difficult state who may or may not have lost her child. And these are big, heavy questions. You have a coercive control man in the back of the cab. You have a man wanting to protect that woman who's Nick,
Hmm.
and these are very real life problems. And so they're very easy to get for an actor to get their head around, and in a very concentrated space of a cab. And Nick's character and Nick, we were trying to bring a level of realism. I come from a realistic background, but I also really enjoy this kind of genre. So it was a bit of a gift. So, and I think most of the best from my observation, the best horror genre, ghost genre comes from a realistic place, whether it be Carrie, who's getting bullied at school and then takes her revenge, or other films, you know. And I think that people like Hitchcock, etc., have their foot in that sense of things coming from character. So when it came to the point of ghosts, because this is a ghost story, the question you come out of the theatre with, if you come out of the theatre to watch it or TV or whatever, is were they real or were they a projection of Nick's character? And I think that's a really good question to come out of the cinema with. And we had Nick and I had the screening in Manchester the other week at the Grimfest. And it was really fascinating to watch people who are dyed in the wool horror genre, ghost genre people coming out going, thank you, thank you, thank you for making a film that doesn't just like tie everything up in a neat way, where there is a disturbing psychological undercurrent for Nick's character, where there is a sadness as well, because he's also lost a child, you know.
Mhm.
So these things, you know, you can as an audience decide which way we're going to go. So Nick and I think the rest of the team were quite keen to ensure that we didn't lock it all down. So some of the things I've said might ring true for some people watching it and may not ring true for others. I wasn't necessarily looking for ghosts and jump scares, but I was looking for a psychological thriller.
Sure. Sure. And I was going to tell you guys that too. I loved the ending of this movie, how it kind of leaves things open-ended like that. You can kind of fill in the blanks, and your imagination is sometimes scarier than actually putting it on screen. So I thought the ending was perfect how you guys did that. That was great.
I think thinking about it now too, it's like that. I mean, there's probably 4 or 5 potential versions of what's happened, you know. And I love the fact that lots and lots of different members of the audience or people watching at home will be like, "Oh, well, I think this happened," and they're like, "Well, no, well, I think this." You know, that's
Yeah.
I I always loved that when I was a younger man coming out of a movie theater and you'd seen a film with a few bunches of friends and you were just chatting about what you thought the movie was about, you know.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah, it definitely starts a conversation. It's love that. So question for both of
And
you.
sorry, just adding one thing to Nick's performance, which I think is extraordinary, to be honest. I'm not seeing Nick do that. I mean, I'm sure he has. I haven't seen all of your work, Nick, but I was determined, and we were determined to try and find and use the kind of warmth that Nick has, and that comedic strength, his timing, his wit, is impressive. Even when we are like trying to kind of invent stuff, it's like it's just there. It's in him. But it
Sure.
was about sort of trying to kind of create that depth, if you like, that really emotional depth of someone that loses a child and has to try and sort of come to some sort of bargain with an evil spirit in order to kind of retrieve some sense of his own moral code. I think that's really a really, really challenging thing to try and play. And I think Nick's done an impressive job.
Oh, totally, totally. And I was going to ask you that too. Was this kind of, I mean, this movie has a very distinct kind of tone, I guess I would call it. Which was, as a director, were you kind of like working with Nick a lot, trying to make sure you balance that tone, or was this kind of a movie where you could just sit back and let him do his thing and watch him go kind of nuts a little bit?
There's a combination of things in that question because technically you've got 70% of the movie in a cab.
Mhm.
Um, and so we took the decision very early on with the designer and DP to make sure we found a cab that was quite retro. I don't know whether any of you've been to England, but we have cabs that are electric nowadays, apparently. And this was a diesel cab, and it was 1980s. Fortunately, Nick had already got his cab license. That was all good. So when he's out of work, he can always always keep himself always keep himself in cash. And the
I've got 3 kids. I need to
yeah,
pay for
got to
their,
do it.
There
Got to
you
you
do
know,
go.
it.
food.
Somebody may choose to kill and swap with the ghost. Who knows what the future might hold? But what we did was chop a cab in half and then opened it out like a book so that we could shoot each end of it. So that my pet hate are low loaders and putting actors on low loaders, particularly when you've got intense scenes, because you
Mhm.
never have enough time or enough road in England to be able to kind of get good performance. So that was the strategy. So I think that because Nick insisted on being on set and in that cab 24/7, even when there was no crew around, by the way. 24/7, he was in the cab, and it was he could see everything that was going on. And the thing is that Nick's knowledge of film is so sharp that he knows exactly what's going on at every point. So he could see what was going on and would be able to kind of work with that as well. So yeah, his deep rooted understanding of the genre and filmmaking itself just makes it a bit of a dream to work with as well, you know.